With this endless parade of distractions and political posturing and phony scandals, Washington's taken its eye off the ball. And I'm here to say this needs to stop.
That the president today in full campaign mode on the ground in Jacksonville. President trying to rally Americans behind his economic plan, something he says critically needed, while Congress, in his eyes and many others, has been busy with everything but jobs and economic recovery. Now, if you're wondering why he feels that way, all you have to do is check in on our friends at the Grand Ole Party, TJ. And from a raw political standpoint, the GOP is arguably blowing a huge opportunity and, frankly, pointing a gun at its feet and pulling the trigger. They're alienating voters and doing their best, it seems, to shrink their base, something they promised after the 2012 elections they were going to go and correct here. I'll give you examples here, and they're all from this week here. Now, remember all the talk about the GOP needing to woo Hispanic voters? They looked at the map and they realized you can't just win with just old white men here. Well, I want to introduce you to Congressman Steve King, who, by the way, has a leadership position in the House. He not only compared DREAM Act valedictorians, again, those are kids who were brought over here as little kids, sometimes infants to this country by their parents, legal immigrants. He compared even the valedictorians to drug mules. He said for each valedictorian, there are 100 marijuana smugglers out there. Not only his own, even his own party tried to get away from him on that one. How about the GOP's outreach to African American voters? Well, if you go to North Carolina, they have an interesting way of doing that. Black voter suppression alive and well. With voter ID, no same-day registration, they'd cut early voting, they'd make it easier to challenge and harass legitimate legal voters, and a ban on extending voting hours in precincts, just coincidentally, usually black precincts, that's where voters get stuck on long lines. And how about the GOP outreach to gay voters? Now listen, you would think, with everything we've seen even at the highest court of the land, that everybody's gotten the memo that the new millennials and frankly the vast majority of this country in growing numbers is behind the idea of gay marriage. Well, in Virginia, where Republicans have a really good chance of picking up the governor's seat here, the nominee from the Republican Party in Virginia wants to defend the state's laws against sodomy. That means what's going on in the bedroom with two consenting adults here, even though a federal court called them unconstitutional. This, again, coming from a guy who in 2009, Cuccinelli, called homosexual acts wrong and should not be accommodated in government policy, you know, like the kind of gay rights policy the Supreme Court just gave a blessing to. And now there's a new group that the party has added to the hit list, conservatives. That is, those who aren't conservative enough. I want to introduce you to a guy by the name of Matt Bevin. He's a Tea Party Republican. He's running for the U.S. Senate next year in Kentucky. And he's unhappy with a certain incumbent for being too bipartisan. Who do you think I'm talking about? Yeah, you might recognize from the picture. Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is too much of a lefty for this guy. He is the same Mitch McConnell who said his top priority 4.5 years ago, was to make Obama a one-term president. The same McConnell whose vision of cooperation with Washington is to make the White House move in only our direction, those are his exact words, and the same Mitch McConnell who called himself the proud guardian of gridlock. You can't make this up. He's also apparently not conservative enough for today's Republican Party. Now, TJ, forget what is
what did you just say?
Ethics, yes, right, about principle. I'm only talking about politics. I'm talking about votes and red and blue and trying to get people into the seats. What mental midget is coming up with an idea in 1 week? Now, that all has happened, and we're only in Thursday. This is just this week. Go after Latinos, go after blacks, go after gays, go after Republicans who are as right as you get here, but apparently they're not Attila the Hun. How does that help Republican prospects?
Well, on the left, let's just keep in mind. You want to mention Attila the Hun on the right. You have Joseph Stalin. So let's just make sure we have there's an extreme to your side too, my friend. All right. First of all, we all know where I stand on gay marriage. I'm pro-gay marriage, have been from the start. I think it's a big mistake. I think it's backwards. I think it's. I think true conservatism should be defined as being out of the bedroom. Social policies should have no part. That's real conservatism to me. And I'm more of a conservative than I'm a Republican. In terms of the Hispanic vote, I think that what people are refusing to see for more than a few reasons is that the vast majority of Hispanics who are here legally and have a vote tend to be more conservative than liberal, especially on social issues.
TJ, 1 second. 71% of the electorate, of the Latino electorate in 2012,
yes,
they voted for Barack Obama.
Right.
Now, Latinos, if you're going to put a wide net, and you can't really do that, but just for this conversation, more identify themselves as Roman Catholics, okay?
Right.
And on social issues, you'd think they're with you. So for a guy and a ranking Republican to compare Dream Act kids with drug mules.
He's not comparing them. He said for every one, there's another. He's talking about numbers. He's saying
for every one, there's 100.
For every one, well, whatever. I'm saying for everyone. He wasn't not comparing. You see that right there. That's the reason why you have people voting a certain way. Is because quite frankly,
by the way,
of
Eric
misrepresentation.
Said his comments were
quite
offensive,
frankly, because
okay?
of misrepresentations like that. He's not comparing kids to drugs or drug mules. He's talking about numbers. Is that comparing them to?
Yeah.
How is that comparing? He's talking numbers.
He's saying for every one good one, there's 100
He's
bad ones that need to go away.
And that's a number. He's not saying little kid from Mexico over here has the same value as some criminal over here.
I like
He's talking
so
numbers.
I'm going to take the shovel away from you because you're digging deeper here.
Oy vey, Smear. He's
Yeah.
talking numbers. He's not talking about. He's not
making it
morally.
worse,
He's
buddy.
not making a moral relativity there.
Can I just, it's one thing to disagree with the issues, and I don't agree
like to
with.
disagree with a lot of things.
I don't agree that there should be different laws on marriage for gay couples and straight couples. I don't think that immigration. I think we should open up our immigration. It's one thing to disagree with the policy. It's another thing to do it with a sense that conveys a certain hatred or a certain fear-mongering, and that's what I think all of these examples tend to show, particularly the Steve King immigration thing. It's not that I don't think the immigration policy is good. It's that these swarthy people are bad.
How are you guys making that connection with what he said?
Boehner, Cantor, they all had huge problems with what he said.
But again, maybe I misheard it, and if I did, then I apologize. But I could have sworn he literally was making a numbers thing.
No, he said for every good Dream Act kid.
Right.
Okay, and again, a Dream Act kid is a kid, a child who came here in the country. Okay,
right?
Who's a valedictorian? There's 100 drug mules.
That sounds like a numbers thing. That sounds like for every one here, there's 100 over
TJ,
here. I don't see how he's
if I said for every
diminishing
conservative
those
radio
children.
host, for every conservative radio host, there's 100 people who are
Crackheads.
Anti-American and need to be deported from the country. You'd be offended because of that comparison. There's a way to make that point without bringing.
You know what? Here's the thing.
I'm not sure, by the way, you're the one.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. Understand this too. Let's all please make sure that again we don't misrepresent. This entire issue is about illegal immigration. If this was about an influx of Swedes and Germans, there would be just as much uproar.
Okay,
and
let
I
me
guarantee
read exactly
that.
what he said, and we'll go to break. Okay?
That is not
For
true.
No, that
every-
is absolutely
not
true.
Please stop.
That is absolutely
Please let me just
true,
read what he said,
Assemblywoman.
so we don't have to guess anymore.
Yeah.
For every Dream Act valedictorian, there are another 100 out there that weigh 130 pounds and have calves the size of cantaloupes because they're hauling 75 pounds of marijuana across the desert.
Okay.
Okay, please,
I'm
you
sorry.
don't say anything, and don't say that's not beyond offensive. The idea that a kid who comes here is one of them's good and the other 100 of them are just drug mules. First of all, it's not true. But second of all, this what Andrew said. There's a meanness to all of this, and you're picking on kids. Shame on you.
Because the DREAM Act is about kids, and this is, and they're talking about dealing with illegal
I
immigration.
try to save you.
But-
You keep
No,
digging.
the DREAM Act is about opportunity for kids who came here
Right, it's about
not
kids.
by their own
I get it.
choice.
I know what the
I
law
know.
is. I know what the
There
law
is
is.
We gotta get to
no
Barbara
law.
I know what the
There
law
is no law.
And it's
That's
about
the
illegal
problem.
immigration, not immigration. Stop
Dominic,
framing
for the
it
record,
as immigration.
We need to explain
Cuckoo
it.
him, A block, cuckoo him, C block. All right, when we come back, we've got an interview with Barbara blowing up. She says Christie's only concerned with millionaires and billionaires. That and more coming up next.
There was a way.